for this gathering, this symposium. I feel like, Mira, we've had a long conversation for many years now, and I have much to learn coming from another world. So I tend to see the surface of the body. I see it architecturally, and I feel so lucky that you curated us like this. It was very holistic. I don't feel like I can talk about anything today without referring to the pictures I saw in the front of the New York Times of the Syrian children, especially as a mother and as a human being. And I have to tell you, it's very hard for me to come here today. I don't feel I can do much that is significant other than to ask us to look at the moral capacity of flamenco, what is its job today. And we are stuck to some extent historiographically in a binary conversation, although some of us are being extracted from it by brilliant scholars in this room, of a kind of self-mythologizing authenticity, a conversation about authenticity, and about which continues a kind of miscegenation of being erased from history. And that is no longer, for me as an historian, a comfortable or a useful place to write, from which to write history. And so these are messy ideas. They are collage and assemblage, because I am having trouble working. I have to admit that to you, even though I've, and so I'm looking to you to help me think through whether or not this is worthy of 20 more pages. And I'm currently going to out myself here, which is I'm writing a book on the Holocaust. And I am thinking about Gitana, you know, the extermination of the Gitanos, Gitanas, and the sort of construction of bodies within classical ballet, but also within other forms. Okay, voila, here we go. Israel Galván de los Reyes, widely considered one of the most innovative choreographers in Spain today, was born in 1973, 2 years before General Francisco Franco's death in 1975. Yeah, you want some lights? Oh, you can't see me?
In other words, the screen is visible, but there's no
Oh, yeah, I made a decision to do what I'm doing with my daughters. I'm trying to teach her how to read, which is you have to imagine. I actually have a PowerPoint that I have sacked. And I'm glad, because I've decided you have to tell me if this is worthy of a visual imaginary. I'm not sure. This is a test. I'm on trial. So I sacked it about 15 minutes ago as I walked into the room. And here, I'm really outing myself. I need therapy, right? His surname, okay, I'll start again. Israel Galván de los Reyes, widely considered one of the most innovative choreographers in Spain today, was born in 1973, 2 years before General Francisco Franco's death in 1975. His surname, Galván, a Latin-derived word, has no real Spanish point of origin, except that its ancestry is found in other parts of Europe during the Spanish Inquisition of the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. This is to say that its made-upness, its creation, belongs to a dynastic line of exiled peoples with Sephardic origins and conquered peoples of foreign origins forced to assimilate in namesake, placing an accent above the second A to the to emerge into an Hispanic world of New Spain, an invented geography of pre-Islamic Hispaniola. Hence, Galván's paternal last name carries with it the weight of history, exile, dislocation, and forced assimilation into an invented Castilian world whose ruling class shed all vestiges of mercantile Hispano-Arab Andalusia. Galván also commemorates the last Middle Eastern dynastic line to confront the militaristic command of Ferdinand and Isabella, whose desire for gold and global position led them into the transatlantic slave trade. This was an empire fed by the Inquisition's catastrophic shedding of 800 years of Islamic, Sephardic, and Catholic coexistence, or what is commonly known as the convivencia. This refugee crisis brought about colonialism is a story about which Galván is profoundly aware, as his namesake carries the two central principles of modern dance: time and space. Temporality, where one lives in transhistorical or rhythmic time, and spatiality, the physical, geographic, and psychic space negotiated by contemporary performers, considering historical iterations of Southeast Asian, African, and European embodiment. The son of two dancers, his mother Eugenia de los Reyes, a gitana, his father José Galván, a beloved and respected civilian maestro of the flamenco and Spanish classical traditions, Galván grew up in his parents' dancing academy, a room of about 40 feet long by 20 feet wide, its closets stuffed to the brim with costumes, shoes, and instruments. He graduated from high school into an Andalusian environment whose arts, commerce, and civic life was waking up from 40 years of governmental censorship. This was an exciting world of possibility, one that his parents had not been so lucky to confront. These 2 decades of democracy would give Israel and his extraordinary sister Pastora a path first to university and then to global stardom. Influenced by his great friend, French philosopher and art historian Georges Didier Huberman, Galván has moved beyond a spiritual break with flamenco, previously described as cubist, with its visual and performing artist's focus on the surface materiality of the body, that of Escudero, to a humanist aesthetic, this is my critique, approach, a choreographic strain driven by ethical impulse instantiated in motion. In conversation with Didier Huberman, Galván's fairly substantial oeuvre retains a transhistorical corporeal expression that enables viewers to enter into the image of history and possess its élan vital, its vital aliveness. We can study Galván's unique psychophysical tension or leitmotif by staring at skin, hands, arms, hyperextended shoulders, and upper torso, the break in the flamenco body line, and the inner impulse or soul of each movement that seems to emerge out of Galván's own sense of being. This corporeal, Arab-influenced collision of inner with outer emotional and soulful expression produces a complex visual imaginary that forces the viewer into an engaged relationship with history. We see this in La Curva, where the shedding of a ritualistic machismo is replaced with absurdist, hallucinatory, off-kilter walks and non sequitur gestures, flicks of the hands, executed to the serialist sounds of a dissonant guitar with electronic score that produces an odd intergenerational encounter of a postmodern flamenco with its cafe cantante era past. In this attempt, in the words of Galván, to, quote, get away from all of flamenco's cliches, unquote, to shed nostalgia and replace it with an austere, jagged-edged, stripped-down realization of the body as an object of self-mockery, repetitive, Cagean atemporality meets flamenco's historic through line through anguished performance art. La Curva, a footnoting of Escudero's, where are you, Julie? I'm sorry, I'm blind, I don't have my glasses on. A footnoting of Escudero's 1924 La Courbe Parisian performance may indeed be read as not so much a commentary on the hypermasculinist Escudero Decalogue, which must be seen within fascistic era Spain, but rather as an anarchist Frenchman, Jean-Claude Galota's surrealist bow-like breaking of the bailaor into 2 anatomical parts, male-female, Spanish-French, masculine androgynous, matador bull, murderer victim, setting the stage for the postmodern interrogation of Spanish dance. In The Legend of Don Juan, which premiered as a curatorial centerpiece of the 1992 Lyon Biennale, Galota offered an interesting iconographic historical critique of the bailaor cum matador, introducing long moments of stillness and pose into his body that appeared more like a haunting than a matador going in for the kill. His matador grew in size through scenic media, offering a dematerialized facsimile of a matador, a 100-foot digital image whose mediated presence overtook any human illusion. It grew and grew and grew like a nutcracker tree. It became ridiculous. Galván has absorbed Galota's display of the power of liveness and immanence, in the words of Bergson, mediated presence with stillness, a physical reconfiguration of the relationship of embodiment to space that arose in the feminist pedestrianism of 60s radical dance art, Anna Halprin, Simone Forti, and Yvonne Rainer. Galván, like Galota, Ángel Margarit, and a range of Catalan dance artists, also draws inspiration from Pina Bausch's neo-realist dance interrogation of contemporary performance. And Galván uses this, he harnesses this as the basis of a post-fascist Spanish idiom. Containing a visual imaginary that extends back in time to the Inquisition, Galván's physical kinesthetic fragmentation lends a neo-realist, post-Francoist ambiguity to the flamenco tradition, thus destabilizing the form and opening it to deeper reflection. What I'm saying is I don't believe anymore in this surrealist, modernist. I think that's out. I think his real interrogation is he's going, as Americo Castro did, the great Spanish historian, in mining the Islamic past for a relationship between God and the body as a portal. So I no longer see it only through art history. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think. And like Galván's global predecessors, the Russian-born architect of American ballet, George Balanchine, who shed aristic gentility, marrying Russian classical ballet to Africanist dance traditions to create a global classical idiom, and British-born Anthony Tudor, the inventor of psychological realism, Israel uses La Curva and Lo Real as choreo history. He establishes a series of physical moments, extremeses, that can be read not only as interrogations of the flamenco form, but as confrontations of history herself. Where is the Gitano in this history of dance? Where is the Jew in this history of dance? Where is the refugee in this history of dance? How can flamenco be harnessed in the service of choreographies of social justice? What is its capacity to evacuate evil from time and space? Galván's broken figurines, hyperextended limbs, detachments from core, oddly androgynous at times, distended use of torso, head, hands, even organs, produces a Benjaminian visual imaginary that seeks to connect present to past historical tragedy through the medium of the body. At times of fetishization of Holocaust history, Lo Real's image, phantoms enable Galván to embody and display a textural, physically proprioceptive iconographic archive that seeks to close the divide between then and now, between a series of steps and a series of shared experiences. So it's transhistorical time, it's transmigrating. He's not in the present, he's not in the past, he's not in the future. It's all at once in the same moment. While Galván has spent nearly 3 decades mining the capacity of his own body to reconfigure itself culturally, politically, and aesthetically, it is his unapologetic interrogation or reconceptualization of flamenco as having intrinsic historical value, separate from its dynastic stylization, its utopianism, that emerges most profoundly in Lo Real, Galván's commissioned meditation on the Nazi genocide against the Gitano-Gitana populations of the Eastern Mediterranean, Northern, Eastern, Southern, and Western European worlds. A brutal work of Spartan design, filled with a unique dramaturgy woven together skillfully in episodic moments, a bit like the cruelty of SS officer Heinrich Himmler's barbarous acts in his extermination of 600,000 Gitanos between 1942 and 1955 at Auschwitz. A work of activist theater that owes a debt to Augusto Baol's Theater of the Oppressed. Lo Real forces the audience by virtue of its gazing into a complicit relationship with history. We are made to feel morally reprehensible, morally responsible for people's silence during and after the events we witness on stage. And I want to say something, that the Gypsies played a very complicated role during the Spanish Civil War. Many of you know this. They fought alongside Franco, then he went and shot them. Paul Preston goes over this, so it's something to be discussed vis-a-vis Lo Real. Okay? In the end, one might argue Galván's greatest virtue is his modesty. Quote, "I want to be seen as a piece of rubbish on stage," unquote. Galván told Victoria Looseleaf in the LA Times in 2003. In the words of Argentinian anthropologist Gaston Gordillo in his wonderful, relatively new book, Rubble, The Afterlife of Destruction, rubble is layered sentiment, the rings of a tree, buried time, constellations of objects, or in the case of Galván, movements understood in relation to historical process. A clearly stated allegiance to the 60s concept of the ordinary body as land, an ecological terrain that like a tree decades, erodes, and renews in geologic rather than human time. Galván's disassembling of flamenco's materiality, its decorative silhouettes and heteronormative architecture into a rhetorical tool of moral confrontation absorbs the humility that ecology teaches us, enabling him to embed an ethical code into the dystopian worlds he forges. And I just end with his quote, "I am a pathological nonconformist. I would rather generate extreme responses than indifference. But this is not rooted in anger or defiance, rather a desire to experiment with looking at what happens if the things we always aesthetically admired are allowed to be questioned. Mr. Galván, I take this a step further and say that the intergenerational conversation of you to history, for instance, to Escudero, became a transhistorical conversation of Galván in 2017 and Galván in 1508 and Galván in 711. Thank you.